Welcome to the Smarter Science of Slim, the scientifically proven program where you eat more and exercise less to burn fat and boost health.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. This is actually like a double bonus podcast. We're going to do something a little bit fun today, a little bit of a surprise for you. We have friend of the show, an all-around great guy, Dr. Jim Nicolai back, and you will remember from his first show that he is the author of the wonderful book, Integrative Wellness Rules. You've seen him on the Dr. Oz show. He works very closely with the wonderful Dr. Weil. He is a board-certified family practitioner and a graduate of the Integrative Medicine Fellowship at the University of Arizona in Tucson. How do you? I can't believe I can't say that word. What is it? Tucson. What? I was like, I haven't read that word because it's spelled Tucson. I'm like, what the hell? Anyway, the author of Integrative Wellness Rules, Dr. Jim Nicolai. Welcome back to the show, brother.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man.
So aside from I'm not going to read any more words for this podcast, but what we're going to do, listeners, Dr. Jim is a brilliant guy who's been digging into some advanced review copies of the upcoming Calorie Myth book and was shooting me some awesome emails with some awesome questions. And I said, Jim, these questions are so good, we should just talk about them on a podcast. So we're going to have a guest podcast where the guest interviews the host. That's crazy.
You got to love it, right? Let's just flip the world on its ear.
Exactly. So I'm going to turn the show over to you, Jim, and do with it what you will.
Well, first of all, I have to tell you, I love the work that you're doing. And I think what you're really trying to say, not only with Calorie Myth, but also with what you've done in the past with Smarter Science of Slim, is exactly what I try to teach to my patients and the people that come in to see me. And, the biggest challenge, I think, especially when you look into nutritional information, is this tendency to get bogged down in, if I do this, what happens if I do this other thing? And what trumps the other? And so that's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. We totally agree on the fact that the rise in blood sugar creates crazy havoc in the body. It starts the whole process of making the clogged sink. My question is, as we begin to look at this and we teach inflammation as a part of the clog, one of the biggest challenges that I've often seen is the way meat is produced these days produces a pro-inflammatory response because, frankly, beef and chicken and a lot of our livestock are fed corn and grain, which has high omega-6s. And so my question is, when you're eating, what's a better choice? To eat something that's more meat-based, not cage-free chicken, beef that's fed corn and grain, or do we go to eating starches and sweets? I think I absolutely have my answer, but I'd love for us to talk about this so people get a little bit more direction in that regard.
Jim, it's a perfect example of the profound nature of your questions, because another way to phrase this, correct me if I'm right, but I just want to make sure as many listeners as can understand what we're getting at here, is what's more important, or is one more important than the other, the macronutrient breakdown of your diet or the source of those macronutrients wherever they're from? Like, is it better to eat a pristine, toxin-free, non-inflammatory 80% starch diet like some people on the internet would recommend? Or is it better to eat a toxic but more macronutrient balanced and inflammatory diet?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly it. Is one going to trump the other every time? I think that's really the biggest question, and it would be great for us to chew that over.
So, Jim, I think this gets back to what is the goal, because actually there's a great example of this in the recent book by my good friend Adam Bornstein, and I forget his co-author's name, but It's called Unleashing the Alpha or something like that.
Yes, Unleashing the Alpha.
Yep. So they talk about, and it's true, and if you ask any bodybuilder or physique athlete, if your goal is purely aesthetic, it's the macronutrients. And it's the raw calorie count, and it's the impact on hormones. If it's aesthetic, you could get ripped up and on the cover of a magazine while killing yourself. In fact, a lot of people are killing themselves to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If our goal is long-term health,
right,
then I think the ideal world is proper macronutrients, proper micronutrients, as well as getting them from a toxic-free, non-inflammatory environment. But if we had to choose, I think if your goal is more aesthetic, you could be a little fluffier on the pristine, toxic-free, anti-inflammatory, blah, blah, blah. But if your goal is more health-related, then you would have to focus much more on the anti-inflammatory, lack of toxins approach.
Yep. Well, and so ultimately, as we've said, I guess the question is, if I'm eating a pristine 80% carbohydrate diet, a very, very high carbohydrate diet, at some point, if I still have the genetic makeup that's going to produce a clog, I'm going to produce the clog. And ultimately, that's, my focus is, if I'm trying to talk to people who are maybe eating chicken or beef as they're dialing back on some of their high carbohydrate foods, to me it makes absolute sense that says, if I can't get the cleanest form of lean chicken or beef, I certainly want to eat that relative to a lot of starchy vegetables or a lot of sweets or a lot of very highly dense carbohydrate foods.
Jim, the other thing that is key, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, is there is often a false dichotomy about the way meat and fish is produced is toxic, but the way starch isn't toxic. Like bread and our GMO soy and dwarf mutant wheat that has a bunch of pesticides put on it. It's not as if going starch heavy automatically means pristine quality. In fact, that's, there's a whole group of wonderful Paleolithic diet advocates and researchers who talk about these anti-nutrients and a whole nother aspect which only comes into play if you're eating starches.
Exactly, without a doubt. I think, when we look at this, and this is the beautiful thing when two geeks get together, right? I mean, you just start going nuts. But, ultimately, when you begin to look at one of the primary, I think the drivers or the one of the main heavy hitters is insulin. And if you're taking that insulin response and jacking it up, the primary thing, regardless of how good it might be toxin-wise, if it raises blood sugar and in turn raises the insulin response, that is the cornerstone of the clog. And the more we can back that down, to me, is the order of priority that I want to give to my patients and the people that are talking to me about this.
Yep.
So
I would agree.
It sounds like we got that one covered. So I've written about this in my book, and one of the things that you've talked about both in your videos and your books is getting fats from whole food sources, whether that's nuts, whether that's seeds. I'm a huge fan, being from Italy, of olives, avocados, and part of the thing that I'm really, really looking into is, what are the anti-inflammatory effects of olives and potentially olive oil? Because part of the thing that we talk about is certainly vegetable oils may not necessarily be high on the SANE score. And I've written about the pretty amazing anti-inflammatory effects of olives, specifically olive oil. So I'd love to get your take on that.
The reason sometimes my message seems anti-oil is not so much that it is anti-oil. I have both olive oil and coconut oil in my house, but rather that it's always just pro whole food, right? I literally, my brain exploded one day because I was like, why is everyone talking about coconut oil and olive oil when they're not talking about coconut and olives? Because everything that's in coconuts like everything that's in coconut oil plus a bunch of other great stuff is in coconuts. And the same thing with olives. And often the same people who talk about these oils are people who are like, and whole foods. Whole foods are so good for you. And Jim, the reason I want to make, like, the point is not at all, and I always say this, like, if you're going to use oils, like if you need to use an oil to cook, use a coconut oil. If you need to use an oil not to cook or to cook at very low temperatures, olive oil is good stuff. But what happens, and you see this already, is you go to the store. I was at Costco the other day, they sell coconut oil, and of course the coconut oil, it on the label, it's like you should eat 2 tablespoons of this a day. Just eat it. Just, like literally eat tablespoons of coconut oil. And if you read the mainstream media, the way it's presented is that you should use it like a supplement. You should just eat oil. And like, why not just eat coconut, the whole food, and why not just eat olives, the whole food?
Yep. And I think what it really is speaking to, and I think this is why I love your message, is it's speaking to the message. And that's to say, let's get back to the time when we couldn't press olive oil out of olives. And how did our body respond at that point? And what did we get as a result of it, as opposed to putting towards bionic foods or even superfoods or super pieces of food? Let's just take the food as how we put it into our bodies and use that as the overarching concept. I love that about you and what you're talking about. I think it's absolutely right on. And I think it just speaks to, as you get to these points of quibbling, where do you go where you really tie your anchor to the overarching concept? And that's just eat whole food, real food, food that drives you to health.
Jim, I really appreciate those kind words and the distinction you made there, because also on the spirit of unity, for example, the author and researcher T. Colin Campbell, who wrote the China study, who's a friend of the show, been on the show twice. Listeners know I'm not a huge fan of all the things he says in the China study, but if you read his second book, Whole, he has these really awesome points. And there were awesome points in the China study about how the government shouldn't be all involved and blah, 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 blah. But his whole premise of his second book, Whole, is there is a almost spiritual level of healing that happens when you consume food as intended by either intelligent design or evolution. Whatever you believe in, like an intelligent designer designed it the way you find it in nature. Or if you ascribe to evolution, you evolve to thrive off of it as it exists in nature. And when you break that down biologically and start seeing that, oh, when you eat the fat in coconut combined with the type of fiber found in coconut combined with the types of phytonutrients found in coconuts, that does something different in your body than if you just drank medium chain triglyceride oil.
Exactly.
And the former is so much more miraculous. So again, it's, to use another religious spiritual type analogy, it reminds me of the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, where humans tried to say, we're going to be like or smarter than God, and we're going to build a tower to heaven. And it crumbled. And that's Michael Pollan's message, right? We've gone down this path of nutritionism, of trying to outsmart nature over the past 40 years. And we've learned that that's not a good idea.
So let's do something differently. Where can we just get back to simplicity, where ultimately it provides us all that we need if we just go to it? Right on. Yep, absolutely. So we were talking about a couple of other things. And, my work as a bariatrician and as I've worked with weight loss in the past, and some of the things that you often see as people are beginning some sort of a nutritional strategy is, let's say we're doing it right. We're not just sucking water out of a clogged sink, or we're not eating less or exercising more to the point of starvation. But let's say we do it right. It seems as if as you go down, and I've seen this, I don't know if you've observed this too, but as people are doing it correctly and weight is being lost, there usually is a point where if we're driving a new set point that people reach plateaus. And part of what I have talked to patients about is if you're doing it correctly, the weight will take care of itself. But it's really important, especially as people are driving towards changing their lives, to get a sense of how long does it take to reset a set point? And once you've reset a set point, how long does it take to reset another set point? Have you gotten a sense of what that might be, or how would you be talking to people about that as they maybe are doing everything correctly? What we were talking about here, they get great results and then they hit a line, and that line begins to start getting frustrating if they've got a longer goal to get to.
The key thing I've found in discussing this with people, Jim, is that we have to be very clear on what is natural, because we're talking about like the body, when it's unclogged, will pursue automatically its natural state, and its natural state is one of health. Now, a natural healthy body, for many people, the vast majority, does not include six-pack abs. Right? It doesn't.
So
and a normal healthy man has testosterone levels fall as he ages. Like that just happens. And for women, estrogen levels fall, and you become less insulin sensitive. Like that is what aging does. We can slow it down, but that is the natural state. The natural state for a healthy 60-year-old woman or man is to have a different body composition than they had when they were 20.
Absolutely.
So I think sometimes people say, I've plateaued, whereas in reality, what's happened is they are at their healthy, natural body composition, but because we live in a society that makes them feel like they need to be like a professional fitness model, they feel like they've plateaued where they haven't. And in fact, what they want to do now, Jim, is very unnatural. And if you want to do unnatural things, then you will have to take unnatural steps. But to get the natural, that is very simple. But we have to understand what natural and normal actually is.
I love it. And I think it really speaks to, I'm a champion of Dr. Andrew Weil. He wrote a great book called Healthy Aging. And one of the things he talked about is anti-aging is a problem because aging is not a disease. And as we age appropriately and naturally, we don't necessarily have to fight the changes that occur. We can bring them and optimize them to the right place that they need to be. But ultimately, aging is a part of what the natural process is. And if we are at odds against it, we're going to have a problem like we've already said. I love that. And it's interesting that we begin to look at the pieces of Setpoint. I think what I often talk about and what you see and what I see too as I get people on these kinds of changes and they notice is healthy means a number of things, right? It means I feel better. I'm not hurting as much. I have more energy. Oh my goodness, I don't know what to do with all of this energy. I actually, when I hit the bed, fall asleep and stay asleep. There's something about my feeling right with the way of the world that just feels good and true. And to me, those are just as much a representation of health as how well your waist is and how well you're putting your pants on.
And to contrast with that, because that is absolutely true, and I think we can all associate with that. We could also associate with the emaciated person who is completely so concerned with their appearance that they feel like crap, they look like crap, everything about their health is terrible. But you can see their ribs. They are skinny. Good job. Who cares at that point? Right. And then Jim, a quick personal story is back when in my trainer days, back when I was doing eat less, exercise more before the Smarter Science of Slim, and listeners know that my struggle was being too skinny. I wanted to be bigger. I wanted to be like my athletic older brother. And I was people know I was eating 6,000 calories. I was spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on supplements, trying to get bigger. And I got to the point where being completely transparent here, very much considered taking anabolic steroids.
Yep.
And I took pro hormones, like the things that Mark McGuire took, which are legal things. They're just, they try to boost your body's natural ability to produce testosterone and such. Those didn't really work. So I was like, okay, it's time to try steroids. I didn't actually end up taking steroids because I had this profound moment, which was, Jonathan, you started on this journey to be healthy. You are now considering taking steroids. How is that? Like, what has happened to you? When did you, where did you go? Like, and that's why I didn't not take them because it was against the law or because they were expensive or blah, blah. I didn't take them because I said, Jonathan, you started this to be healthy. What's wrong with you? And I was like, okay, no steroids for me.
Yep. I love that you just said that story, because I think what it does is there are a whole lot of people that are going to hear you and go, oh my gosh, that's me, in the sense that I know at the core of my being what healthy is. Healthy is right, good, true, balanced. It's nothing more than feeling that you are moving with the harmony of the world around you and you're along with it for the ride. And the more we can begin to define that and convey that to people, that's what you look for. That's your target. And the journey begins to be made in finding that and then maintaining it, not necessarily to having perfection or what everybody else wants you to have or what our culture says is right or what you need to have. All of those things, I think, are what both you and I are here to do and what our mission is about in propagating this story for people. So I love that, man. My final question gosh, I could give you a man hug over the phone for that one, because that was beautiful. Part of what we talk about, pills, potions, and powders, you talk about potentially taking supplements as a way to see if you can get better or make that happen. In my work, I certainly will recommend various different things, both herbally and in the dietary supplement world, to help people when their clog is broken, to see if we can improve that process outside of food. My question to you is, we talk about pills, potions, and powders as ultimately, overarchingly being bad. There are some, I think, that help in my practice, in my particular world, and that you've written about, whey protein powder, for instance, and some particular things like vitamin D and fish oil. And I'd just love to get your take on some things that may not necessarily fall into the category of whole food, but in our culture and in our very fast-paced living, might there be some things that could help us along that might allow us to do just as good of a job as that overarching whole food concept is driving us forward?
Absolutely. The message I try to communicate whenever possible is that it's not that supplements are bad. It's that supplements, as indicated by their name, are designed to supplement, not to be primary. So I make a statement in the Calorie Myth, something along the lines of, there is no pill, powder, or potion in the world that will do for you even remotely that which eating whole nutrient-dense foods will do. So it's not, I'm definitely not against supplements. I'm more like, that would be a bit analogous to saying I'm against putting a brace on your broken ankle. Like, I'm absolutely not. There is, of course, places for modern technology, especially in acute situations. Like, if you break your ankle, you just need to rest it and let your body heal it. But we don't just say, okay, sit down for 6 months. We say, here's some crutches, here's an air cast, here's a brace, here's some anti-inflammatory medication to help the process. You can raise it, you can put ice on it. There's a bunch of stuff we can do to optimize. But like, let's say you did all that stuff and then went out and were like, okay, I'm just going to go skip rope on one leg, the leg with the broken ankle. We'd be like, well, what the hell? Like, none of that other stuff matters. You're re-breaking your ankle.
Yes.
So that's the key thing. And I also sometimes I over-index away from supplements just because it is so easy to over-index on them. We all want the magic pill. We all want this, just take this thing and you can continue doing whatever you're currently doing and everything will work out. So I'm not against them, but I over-index against them because they're so easy to abuse.
Yep. And I think it's the same thing in the lines of whole foods versus pieces of foods or food-like substances, right? I mean, the overarching concept is to say, I am going to get this from my primary source, and if I need a little help, I will get that. I think what I've talked about too is being on Dr. Oz, on the Dr. Oz show, I have to tell you that, if you took everything that Dr. Oz recommended, there would be a laundry list of stuff that you would be forced to take. And not unlike the quote in your book, you might get full by the 5,000 pills that were stuffed into your stomach. But, in this world of so many choices and so many things, especially in the supplement world, one of the things that I've often told people is you got to simplify. And anything that you're taking more than 2, 3, or 4 things means that you are overreaching. And the more that you can pull back and begin to start living better through some of what your choices are, food-wise, sleep-wise, exercise-wise, that's when the supplement stream can be simplified. And if it's simplified, you can do it regularly. Because anytime you're taking more than 5 things a day, your brain is going to explode. And that's ultimately, I think, where a lot of people come to see me because they have no clue what to do or how to do it.
Jim, I think there's also there's a third category. There's food, and then there's supplements, and then there's convenience whole foods. Let me give you an example. Cod liver oil. I guess you could call that a supplement, but it's also, is olive oil a supplement? Is wheatgrass powder a supplement? Because it's a whole food. It just doesn't have water in it.
Right.
So I think there's also this really exciting opportunity we have where instead of taking a synthetic X, we could say, is there a way to freeze dry or desiccate or just dry out? Like, for example, desiccated beef liver tablets, as delicious as they sound, are like if you are deficient in B vitamins or have a problem with energy levels, before you go shoot some 5-hour energy, you might just want to eat some beef liver. And if you don't like liver, then you might just want to take a small portion of it that's had all the water sucked out of it and just take it with a glass of water. You're still eating a whole food. It's just been combined with modern technology to concentrate everything but the calories.
Right. And I think as advocates for and coaches of this way of living and this way of being, the more I think yours and my job is to help people navigate through all of the choices to make things simple and, like you said, to make them effective. Because ultimately, if it's not working for you, you need to trash it. And it's not your deficiency, it's the program's deficiency. So for whatever is working for you, great. But if it is not, then we need to retool and look for something else. And it's, I think, our role to be able to help people with that. I agree with you. When I'm on the fly, having a quick shake of whey protein powder and some greens that I can pop in with some flax and literally takes me 3 minutes is a better solution than waiting 7 minutes at a McDonald's for, a Egg McMuffin and a big cup of coffee. So from that perspective, we have to be able to drive individuals to good choices so that they ultimately are finding that it's working for them. And I think that's how we roll.
And Jim, it's extremely exciting because we live in an economy where if we as consumers demand something, you will see amazing progress very quickly. An example is gluten-free. So when people started saying, I don't want gluten and stuff, it took about a year for there to become an entire section of the economy designed to be gluten-free. Now, that doesn't mean they're healthy. The reason I'm going that direction is the more we can focus people on simple whole foods, you start to see things. I have no affiliation with this company, but I'm incredibly impressed by them, like Quest bars. So there's this new form of protein bar, which its primary ingredient is whey protein isolate, followed by milk protein isolate, followed by prebiotic fiber, which is they use prebiotic fiber in studies to literally heal the gut bacteria and lower the set point of rats and mice. It is extremely healthy for you. And then it's like almonds and some stevia. There's like literally 6 ingredients in the bar, all of which are totally natural. And if you eat one of these things, if someone just said, hey, try this, you would think it is a chemical poop storm, but it's not. Right? Like, so as people start to demand this, that doesn't mean there's no such thing as convenience foods. That's the brilliance of modern technology is I do think we can function, and we can, if you're going to be sane on a plane, you can absolutely be sane on a plane. And I think it's only going to get easier over time as we vote with our dollars, because ultimately the day that no one buys Pepsi anymore is the day that PepsiCo will stop producing it. Yep,
without a doubt. Yep. It's so amazing that you talked about this, because right when you were talking about what you said, it gave me the exact image of, and that's what I take on a plane, right? I mean, that's when I can't or don't want to eat the $5 packaged insane food that they're telling me that I can get. I have packed already those kinds of foods that I know I can eat and not have to be hungry for the next 8 hours. So, I mean, it's possible. I think it's what the work that we're doing is to just help people navigate and streamline on a path that allows them to get on the other side of it, where on the other side health is. That's, I think, what we're going to keep on doing. And this has been fabulous, my friend.
Jim is like, am I supposed to do the outro for the show, or how is this supposed to end? No, and listeners, please, if you're not driving, give a little round of applause here for our guests. Like, we didn't really plan this, so round of applause, Jim. You did who knows, you might be seeing your own podcast up here on iTunes here pretty soon.
This was absolutely awesome, man. I really appreciate the time.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jim. I so appreciate the questions. I know the listeners do too. And listeners, obviously, you can see why I've spent so much time not on the podcast, also talking to Jim. He's obviously a brilliant person, as well as a spiritual being. You can tell he's got his head on straight, and he's also got an MD. So he's like the best of both worlds, which is awesome. So Dr. Jim Nicolai, thank you so much for hosting today's show.
My pleasure, my friend.
And folks, if you want to learn more about Dr. Jim, please check him out at drjimnicolai.com. Last name is spelled Nicolai, and his book is Integrative Wellness Rules. Absolutely check it out. And please remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Chat with you soon. Wait, don't stop listening yet.
You can get fabulous free SANE recipes over at carriebrown.com.
And don't forget your 100% free eating and exercise quick start program, as well as free, fun, daily tips delivered right into your inbox at bailorgroup.com. That's BAILOR group.com.